I'm so excited for you here from my new friend Tom Muccio about his ideas and his experience around innovation in the way that he helped two pretty big companies, Procter and Gamble and Walmart, do some pretty amazing integrations, and the way that that comes down to drill that down into small business and the impacts that we can have in our local business as he's run small businesses as well as consulted with them. So here's my new friend Tom. Welcome to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with leaders who are redefining industries in every corner of the market. From startups to established businesses, we'll uncover the strategies, challenges, and insights that drive success. Get ready to be inspired by the Mavericks who are shaping the future of business. Welcome, everyone, to Market Mavericks. I have my new friend here with me, Tom. Tom, I'm so excited for us to have a conversation about business. And so just if you don't mind, introduce yourself. Tell us what your career path has been. You're kind of giving me a little bit of an intro here earlier before we started recording, but tell the folks what you've been doing, Tom.
Okay, well, I was 34 years with Procter and Gamble in roles of sales, marketing, general management, U.S., international, and then I retired at 55 and uh, decided to get involved in small business. So I became a CEO of a startup company with a group of investors and did that for about 8 years. And then since then, I've been doing consulting and speaking and mentoring and helping those that have worked with me years past as their leading companies or starting businesses. Uh, so that's kind of I like to keep busy.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the words that you said earlier to me is an entrepreneur, and
Right.
that's something that I love that idea. Right, as we hire a sales team, I'm looking for entrepreneurs. So talk to us about what is that, number one, and number two, how do you help foster that? What advice would you have to a small business owner who's wanting to help foster that culture of entrepreneurs of their employees?
Okay, well, I consider an entrepreneur as someone who is an entrepreneur but takes advantages of the resources that exist within the company. A lot of times, and I noticed that was I was a startup, I had some great ideas, but I didn't have the resources to kind of to do with that. But
Sure.
dealing in my career with Procter and Gamble and then the Procter and Gamble Walmart relationship, there were a lot of assets to take to use for the benefit. And I found that the best way to do that was to encourage people to do that. When I was the team leader, I had everyone would have a whiteboard in their office, and they would have their top objectives, what they thought would be breakthrough, whatever. And I would go around and say to them, "Give me an update," and then what does help look like? And it was
Okay.
amazing. It wasn't huge things that were in the road, but there were things that they could identify the problem. They just didn't know what options were available to help make that a solution and bring it to life. And by doing that, I had lots of people in the organization working on breakthrough. So in the law of averages, I was going to get a lot more breakthroughs than if everything had to come up and get my permission and
Wow.
then so on and so forth. So I was, I had 8 to 10 breakthrough ideas being worked somewhere along the line. Uh, and it was just, what can I do to help make that come to life?
I love that. I love your terminology there, and I love the way that you engage with your team. And you talked about what does help look like, what is breakthrough. So is there something practically in terms of you allow them to spend 10% of their time, 20% of their time? How did they allocate out their main role, and then this idea of I want to potentially add a new service line or add in this new role for the organization? How much time did you allow them to have?
That's a great question. And the way I kind of thought my way through that is that every job has what I call a Friday's payroll element and an invent the future element.
Okay.
If you spend all your time on uh, Friday's payroll, you don't have much of a future.
Sure.
And if you spend all your time on the future, then and let Friday's payroll slip, you go out of business on that as well. So it's taking every job and saying there's a Friday payroll element and an event the future element. And then I would say, on Friday's payroll, what we want to do is make that as predictable as possible, as reliable as possible. And we want to set up gauges so that it's very easy to see um, where we are at any point in time. The
Okay.
example is when you're driving your car, you're not constantly just looking at your fuel gauge, but
Yeah.
it's nice to have it there when you say, whoa, I've got 200 miles to go and I only have 4 gallons or half a tank of gas. Maybe I should see a convenient place to pull over. So it's that element. And then I encourage people to think of the biggest uh, uh, I would say, obstacle to innovation is
Okay.
incrementalism. But
Okay.
that's but there's a it's an and solution. It's I mean I always tell people the Henry Ford the automobile was not a continual improvement on the horse. The electric light bulb was not a continuous uh,
Yeah, that's a great point.
handle.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, you could do things to make the candles bigger. You can do things to make them scented, and and with a horse, you can breed them that are either faster or stronger. So there's improvements, and it's kind of like a continuum.
Okay.
Uh, and so, okay, how do I, and again, you think about the automobile as an example, that was a huge breakthrough. Then there were started to be innovations like you could get another color. You didn't have to have black
Sure.
or, uh, or we're going to put windshield wipers on. Well, those were improvements. And then there was semi breakthroughs and things like station wagons, trucks, and so on and so forth. So it's a blend. It's an either or, but it's a mindset that's
Okay.
constantly looking out into the future and saying, what if such and such would happen, or if only we could do this. Uh, and then but at the same time, making sure that you take care of the day-to-day business. The other one that I use to describe that to people is I call it the pilot's checklist. Every job has a pilot's checklist. And if you notice, if you've been on a plane, you're sitting there looking out the window and you see the pilot going around the plane. I'm not exactly what he's doing, but he's kicking tires and lifting little.
Yeah.
And so what he's doing, if there may be a maintenance problem, there may be something else, but it shouldn't be because he didn't do the pilot's checklist. And so that again, every job has one of those. And that's called being on top of your business and
Okay.
taking care of the variables that you can manage and control and identify. And in terms of Friday's payroll, the other thing I encourage people is look to simplify as much as you can,
Okay.
standardize as much as you can, and then mechanize it if you can, so that you can have a gauge that can help you to know when I'm ahead, behind, or whatever that might look like.
Okay. So let's take the KPIs or the pilot's checklist. When you look at your organization or when you're consulting with someone, how do you help them to find out what are the gauges, what are the KPIs, the key performance indicators for a specific role for their Friday's payroll? When they're looking out to say, okay, I'm responsible for these 3 things, 5 things, 10 things. How do you help a business owner evaluate that for their employees to help them know my gauges are right here? I've got some leeway time. I want to jump in and look at the inventing for the future. What advice would you have?
Well, one of the things that I like to do is flow chart processes, saying, okay, if this is here's where we want to go, and each person or each they have a role that has certain elements. Think about it almost like a puzzle pieces,
Okay.
and so what are my outcomes going to be? What are my inputs? And then also, is there something that in what's being passed to me or other things that aren't included that could help me do that even better? Uh, and it seems to work pretty well. And I kind of look at it like it's if you get a ball of string with knots in it, you go to the next knot and you untie that knot, then you
Okay.
got a little bit more space till you get to the next knot.
Sure.
So it's those kind of ways of identifying. And it's important to understand what I do and how that plays with the end result. For instance, in the P&G Walmart relationship, one of the things I would do is I went to every analyst meeting that Walmart had. I would be the only supplier there, but
Wow.
that's what they were making their promises to the Wall Streets and the analysts. And I said, what are they promising? Then I would go back and saying, okay, these are I would just make up, okay, here's what their promises were. What can I do that helps them achieve whatever they're trying to do
Sure.
in each of these particular areas? And that gave me the right to have a seat at the table because I was bringing them solutions that they had already previously identified.
Sure.
On the way, I could also introduce other breakthrough ideas that weren't on that page, that were more future oriented, but I had some credibility because I had understood what they were trying to do and I was bringing solutions to them.
Cool. I like that. So tell us about the P&G and Walmart relationship. What was that?
Well, essentially, uh, uh, Procter and Gamble. It started back in like '87. P&G was we were 8 individual divisions of product divisions that operated almost semi uh, autonomously, but
Okay.
yet all the invoices said Procter and Gamble.
Okay.
We were the most successful consumer product company in the world, and we're a bit of a bully because what we were doing was working, okay?
Sure.
And our strength was understanding what consumers wanted in products, inventing those products, and then marketing them. We were the number one TV advertiser. We had soap operas. We did all kinds of things. And we had viewed our customers as a necessary evil. They really weren't part of the equation. Well, Walmart was a startup company in a market. Well, I'll pause here just momentarily. The retail industry was going through kind of a transition. Where you still had much of the business in grocery stores, you were starting to get the 5 and 10s, the Targets, the Kmart's,
Okay.
uh, to morph into discounters.
Okay.
You super centers starting to be developed. You had club stores, so you had the market was in a transition stage, and we had a new senior VP of sales come into the company from he'd been the president in the Philippines, and he came back and he said, "Well, we're so successful, but look at all this change that's going on. Shouldn't we be doing? What are we going to do to make sure we win in the future?" So I was the national sales manager at the time of the food division, and he said to me, I'm going to put you in charge of a multifunctional team. You're going to have resources from all the elements of the company, and I want you to and that team to come back with the recommendation. How should we go to market in the year 2000?
Okay.
So our team, we reviewed everything about our company, what we thought we were doing well, where we thought there were gaps. We looked at competitors. We looked at other industries. We brought futurists in, people that were experts in supply chain or finance, and said, "Well, what do you see happening in the future?" And we started to identify patterns, and we realized that at this time, P&G, um, well, one of my colleagues jokingly said, P&G could have been a Mercedes, but we broke it up into 8 bicycles. Uh, so one of the ideas was, how do you not lose the focus that for the individual product division? but get more leverage as a company, number
Sure.
one. And two, how can you uh, 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 engage with your customers on a different way? And we identified things like Merrill Lynch every day could tell us what our stock portfolio and each individual stock was that day. Well, at P&G at that time, it took 3 months or 3 weeks after the month ended for us to know what we shipped to Walmart.
Wow.
And then it came on 8 different reports. It came in an internal measurement, not on dollars and cents like Walmart ran their business. So we could see these, we were starting to see these disconnects. So we made a recommendation, but the recommendation was not widely accepted at P&G because we were winning on the old system, and there's five dragons that are in every company I've dealt with that resist change
And
and
what are those?
innovation. Excuse me.
I said, and what are those?
Okay, the first one, I call it corporate fog. And what happens is the people at the top of the company uh, have have no idea what it's like to be a customer or a supplier of their company. In fact, I joke and say, if many of them had to be a customer of their own company, one of their key objectives would be to switch suppliers. Uh, and then you've got the people doing the work that are waving their hands like this. And they're saying, you don't realize the pain points I'm suffering. You don't realize the opportunities we're missing. But again, the fog is so thick, they can't be seen, and the top doesn't know what's going on. And so people say, well, how do you get rid of corporate fog? I said, well, how does nature do it? Well, the sunshine comes out, puts light on the situation, and the fog goes away. Corporately, that means being able to define reality. If
Okay.
you're willing to be honest and look at truth, solutions then become a lot easier. So first one,
Okay.
dragon is, well, and I say, if you want to marry the princess, you got to kill the dragons.
I love it.
So that's how I came up with the dragons. And and then I say, well, I'm gender sensitive as well. So if you want to marry a prince, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. So
I love that.
dragons or frogs,
So
either one.
the first dragon is the corporate fog.
Yep.
What are the other ones?
Second dragon is, and I think Trump took this for me. This is not me trying to be politically correct, but it's the deep state.
Okay.
Those are the people who are in position today. They're very satisfied with their results. They don't want someone coming in and changing this and changing that. And they have the power. So they can quash a lot of things and keep things from happening. And the third dragon is the swamp, which is the bureaucracy. And what happens is it builds up over time. And every one of those policies probably made sense at some point in time, but because nobody goes back and untangles the wires, it's you're dealing with a lot of roadblocks you don't need to have.
Yeah.
Then the third dragon is what I call the Flat Earth Society,
Okay.
and they're so fixed with what they think is truth
Yeah.
that I've seen a map. If you go out to Columbus, you're going to fall off the edge of the world. I've seen the map. It's flat. Uh, and then the last one, the one that I have the least patience for, is the loyal opposition.
Okay.
And despite you making progress, they'll they're always trying to find something wrong. They'll do things almost like passive aggressive to get in your road. I tell the joke if I had divers on the bottom of the lake, and then I have people who are saying to the senior officers, "I'm supporting this. I really am supporting it," but they're standing on the air hose, the divers.
Yeah.
Those are the five dragons, and I've seen them to one degree or another in absolutely every company that I've been involved in. Most organizations have that as well, and even in new organizations, they for some reason they just grow on their own, and
Yeah.
you got. I mean, if you think about it, the in a garden, the bias is always for the weeds.
Sure.
And it's
Yeah.
the same in an organization, the bias is always for the dragons.
I love that. So when you come in and consult, what are you typically like? What advice would you have for a small business owner, even a solopreneur that's wanting to squash the dragons, slay the dragons, and what advice would you have for them to kind of evaluate which one that they're either struggling with, or what advice would you have?
Well, what I always do is I go talk to people in at various levels in an organization.
Okay,
Obviously, startup organizations, you don't have as many levels or as many people. And I say to them, okay, what are the things that you're experiencing that are pain points? What are the opportunities that you're seeing that are missed? What do if you could do one or two things differently in your role, what would that look like? And uh, so you start to get, I call it buckets. You start to get buckets of things. You
okay,
get, how could I do existing work better? What new work should I be doing that I'm not doing today? What resources, if I had them, could I, and this isn't about being Santa Claus and just plus, anything you want.
sure,
It's got to be, you got to be accountable. And I'm a big believer in testing. I used to do a lot of testing. You can test almost any idea,
okay,
and particularly if you're a startup company or entrepreneur, you that de-risks the idea. So I could take, well, in the case, well, here's a true example. P&G and Walmart. P&G was, we had CoverGirl Cosmetics and Max Factor. Okay,
okay,
so cosmetics, that little fiddly things for nail polish, eyebrows, for the, okay. In Walmart, that was managed by the department manager that had health and beauty aids, which
okay,
was toothpaste, shampoo, the big items. So the last thing they did was work on the cosmetics. And so if you went into a Walmart store, you saw a lot of out of stocks. You had old product because those were, they're constantly every quarter they would have new longer eyelashes, whatever. And so you go into Walmart cosmetics and you could have any eyeshadow you wanted as long as it was blue. Uh, uh,
it's kind of like the first cars.
yeah. So I said to the guy who was the senior VP of merchandising, I said, I think I know how to fix that. He said, how do you do that? I said, well, what we need to do is put a department manager in just for cosmetics. It'll pay for itself. I promise you. He said, well, it's easy for you to say. And I said, okay, how about if I pay for a department manager for 6 months or three stores, 6 months, and we'll test it. And we'll see what was the increase, what's the return on investment, uh, and so forth. Well, the results were so astronomical that within 6 months, he went and they all across Walmart. They then
Wow,
start rolling out department managers for cosmetics. Well, think what that did for P&G, because
sure,
now I was able to sell stuff there because I had the right product. It was in stock. So it worked great for Walmart and it worked great for P&G. But we were able to test it in a way that I had what was called a test and learn budget. I couldn't use it for pricing because that would be just discriminating against one customer over another, giving
okay,
one customer an advantage. But if I had a test and learn budget, I could say, okay, well, let's try this. And sometimes things would, oh, and the other thing I would do is I would say, okay, we're going to test this, but we're going to have success criteria written down.
okay,
So what does this have to do for Walmart to support going forward? What does it have to do for P&G to support going forward? Then we would evaluate the results versus those criteria. Because it's real easy to fall in love with your own idea
sure,
and it's not working, you keep pushing it. Well, we also had a step that would say, okay, if it didn't work, did it not work because it wasn't a good idea? Or did it not work because we didn't execute it well?
okay,
And some we would say, we still think it's a good idea, but we know that if we don't, this, by doing this, we hurt the timing, we did whatever. So we'd retest it again. But again, we're doing it with very high upside, low downside.
sure. So a small business owner, they test this. Is it marketing? They do an A/B test with their marketing. Is it the incentive program? Like what is bring it down from P&G down to a small business owner? They've got 10 employees. How do they get into this kind of testing within their organization? What have you found that's been
It could
successful?
be
What's an
prototype.
area they could try out?
Yeah, it could be prototyping something.
Okay.
Uh, when I was in part of the small company, the startup company, we would go. We were doing spray insulation was one of our products.
Okay.
So we would go to a home builder, uh, and we would say, "Let us show you how this works," and then because we had claims that this would seal the house, it would make the affordability of heating and all of that much lower. Well, we would prove it to him because he was okay. My average house is when I sell it, this is what, and then we say, okay, here's what it cost you to do. Here's the benefit. You can now say this because it was much more expensive than the fiberglass.
Sure.
But we had a way of demonstrating that, and then a way that he was able to show that to a potential home buyer. We actually made a little system that showed uh, how that was like a demonstration that that a salesperson could use uh, to demonstrate that.
Okay.
Uh, so it's like it's prototyping. It's even sampling. If I'm selling cookies in the mall, maybe I break some up and go around handing them out. Uh,
Definitely. Yeah,
saying,
the samples are really nice.
yeah, and by the way, if you go out in the next half an hour, we're going to knock 10% off. So it's keeping things dynamic
Yeah.
and helping to remove the roadblocks that are in people's mind uh, that keep them from wanting to say yes.
I love that. That's fantastic advice. I like that idea a lot, and I'm just trying to think through of applying it in our business, and I like the idea of demonstrating kind of a prototype, being able to put that out in the market and not releasing it all at once. That doing some testing is very very helpful. So Tom, talk to us about your kind of guidance advice when you're working with a business and they're saying, hey, I want to either reinforce my culture or redevelop my culture or completely reignite my culture. What advice would you have for them in terms of this kind of hot button issue of culture within the organization?
Well, it is. There's a lot of elements involved in that. I'm a big believer in co-design, so involving the people that are a part of the team in developing what are the principles that we want and values we want to operate. And then I'm very clear when new people come in, this is what we agreed. So if this doesn't fit with what you believe, maybe you should find someplace else because this is the way we're going to run this
Yeah.
ship. Uh, and then I'm a big believer, the biggest problem is, the problem with recognition and reward systems,
What's that?
they work. You get what you recognize, you get what you reward. And so, again, if you're asking me to do something that's going to work negatively to me, uh, I'm not going to support it nearly as much. So it's designing the tasks and the processes and then having the recognition and reward. And again, if I was a team leader today, I would take a picture of my leadership team. I'd send it away and have it made into a puzzle with the picture of the team on the front and the pieces on the inside, and I'd give one to everyone so that they can set that on their desk and realize that everybody's an important piece of the puzzle, but they're only one piece of the puzzle.
I
And so
love that.
putting it together. And people say to me, well, was your success personally? And I said, well, I'm just wired. I'm courageous. I have no problem going into lion's den. Uh, Two, I'm very resilient. Knock me down, I'll get back up again. Knock me down, I'll get up again. But what I learned is humility. I
Okay.
learned, regardless of how clever and talented I thought I was, I'm only one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So then how did I then apply that into organizations that I was leading is through servant leadership.
Okay.
Uh, and that was ensuring that the best interest of those who were working on that team, that they had the opportunities, they had the right tool, they had the encouragement, they had the recognition. And I looked for people who didn't get, if you're team leaders get a lot of credit when things go right, but there's a lot of people who are key to that. I think about it as my body. I got a lot of pieces of my body that I can't see, but I'm sure as heck glad they're working well. But the pieces that are in the outside, I can look in the mirror and my hair needs to. I can do a lot of those. I
Sure.
get credit for that. So I'm a big believer in finding all kinds of people in an organization that are doing good things and recognizing them.
I love that. That is excellent advice. Well, Tom, we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I really appreciate your generosity and the wisdom that you've been sharing. I got a few questions I'd love to kind of close on.
Okay,
Number
great.
one, we love to learn from other people's mistakes. So over the life, you can be at P&G, it could be at the small business that you ran, or in your consulting business. What's a mistake that you made, and what's something that you've learned from it?
Well, the biggest mistakes I've made is making assumptions that aren't true. So
Okay.
I always say, what you don't know won't hurt you as much as what you know that's not so. Because if you're operating
Oh yeah.
if I'm heading for New York and I sign keep saying Chicago, the faster I go, the further I'm getting from New York. But I'm thinking I'm on the right road. And then the second is the importance of communication. If everyone in the organization gets to see what's going on and has the ability to speak to it, to ask questions, to understand, then there's much more commitment to the success. And then you want to make sure that with success, it's shared success. It's not just a handful of people.
I love that. That's those are fantastic, and I definitely I will remember that quote of that it's not what you don't know, that it's what you know that's wrong. I mean that is wow. That I will definitely be holding on to that one, as I have done that many times. The assuming, I had an old football coach tell me, what assuming does, and
Yep.
he had to describe to me what assuming does, and it was funny. Because I'd personally never heard that. But I do really like that analogy, and I think it's an incredible point for us to pull out and say, as leaders, as business owners, even as a husband, there are assumptions that I make in my life as a dad, as a husband, as a business leader, as someone that lives in the community that are just wrong, and I
Right.
think they're right, but they're wrong. It leads me down a path
It
I don't
may
need to
have
be
been
on.
right at one point in time,
Yeah,
but circumstances have changed, and
yeah,
I'm still going with the old tapes.
yeah. I love that. So a couple of things, a couple last points. Number one, avid reader. I love to read, and I love to get book recommendations. And so our audience also likes that as well. So Tom, what's a book that you've read recently? It can be in the last few years that has impacted you a lot as a leader.
Well, my book, Collaborative Disruption, is an excellent book for anybody who's wanting to lead organizations. It's unvarnished. It's got a lot of principles, great sayings, and whatever. But putting
I
that
love it.
aside,
No. Let's touch on that one just real quick. So tell us a little bit more about your book.
well, it's the story. It's the backstory of P&G Walmart relationship, which
Okay.
basically changed retailing and the way customers and suppliers work together. It's now a global phenomenon, and it is to customer supplier relationships what the assembly line was for Ford. I mean, it just
Uh,
changed
yeah, I
the
love that so much. So
that
how
those
does someone get your book? Where do they find it?
It's available any place, Walmart.com, Amazon.com,
Okay.
Barnes
I'll
and Noble,
put it
any.
in the show notes for the folks. That'll
Okay.
be great.
But the one book that I gave everybody in my organization that was a first line manager was the 1 minute manager. As soon as they
Yeah.
had
Okay. Yeah.
responsibility for leading people, I'd give them that because it had three real simple principles.
Okay.
You had to have clear, specific goals and timetables and so forth. You had regular review, and those regular reviews would result in praising and encouragement or redirection. But that way, it's not overly complicated. And yeah, as organizations get bigger, there's more fancy ways of implementing it. But that was a good one. And another good one is called the goal, and it's again it's a story, uh, but with the moral, and it's about how do you and you take an organization and you go to the next place that's a roadblock and you untangle it there, and then that gives you some more space. And they're both real easy. They're weekend reads. They're
Yeah.
read when you're on an airplane, so it's not overly complicated. But I'm an avid reader as well. I would read 2 or 3 books a week, and if I could get 1 or 2 nuggets out of any book, it was
It's
well
worth
worth.
it. Yeah, it's worth it. I love it. I take a very similar approach. So, Tom, again, I appreciate your time. Let's close on this. What's a piece of advice that you wish you would have had before you stepped in as CEO of that small business?
Well, it was uh, in my case, there was a business portion which was I should have understood cash flow better. I
Okay.
understood profit and loss, but didn't understand cash flow
Okay.
uh, as well as I should have.
Okay. And
I
what's
looked
something you
at
learned in
everything.
that? Let me pause you right there. What's something you learned in that that would be helpful to our audience?
Well, the fact that you're making money on and profitability wise is good, but if your terms are too, you run out of money and you keep borrowing, having to borrow. So being able to have a manage on cash flow as well as that would be a big help. So that was for my small business. My big business experience, uh, I became a believer and made Jesus my Savior and Lord in my early 30s. And I
Love
got
that.
so much wisdom when I started reading the Bible. It
Yeah.
was just incredible. The principles, uh, the whole idea of servant leadership, all of those things I was able to develop. And I wish that I would have had that 15 years earlier.
Yeah. I love that. As a fellow believer, I could not um, kudos that enough. I mean, I completely agree. The more that I study, the more that I learn in my walk with the Lord, the better I become
Yeah,
as a leader. The more empathetic I
absolutely.
become, the more patient I become, the more forward thinking I become, the more strategic I become, the more I
Right.
surround myself with better people. It just I'm continuing to be molded more like Christ, and I'm leading into
Absolutely.
being a better leader.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, that's my experience for a lot longer years than you've been.
That's,
You're on the right track.
I appreciate that, Tom.
Believe me.
I appreciate your time, brother. I appreciate what you're doing. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you? Obviously, we're going to put the in the show notes the book. That definitely need to pick that up and read the fascinating story that you were part of with P&G and Walmart, and how it's changed the trajectory of so many businesses. I mean, that's going to be incredible to read. I look forward to picking it up myself. But if they are interested in coaching, if they're wanting to know more, how do they get connected to you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I
Okay.
hadn't been on for very long, but I'm on there because of the book.
Okay.
Uh, and my email is tom@tommuccio.com.
Okay.
Uh, and I'm available.
That
I
sounds
got to
great.
be careful because if you work for free, you're busy all the time.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want you to work for free. I also don't want you to give your cell phone number out. Well, we've had some folks starting to take that, and I'm like, no, but please let's be respectful of your privacy too. But
But
just
I will work for money to go to charity. So I've got a lot of organizations that I support, and I'm happy to have checks go to strict to them in
I love that.
return.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very gracious of you to do. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time, brother. I'm so glad that that Steve connected us, and I look forward to
Well,
reading your book. And
I
I
pray a
appreciate your time.
blessing on you and your all that you put your hand to. And I'm sure that you're going to be a blessing and are a blessing to many, many people. And that's just, it's terrific that you do what you do and you do it so professionally
I
and so
appreciate
well.
that. You're very kind, Tom. I appreciate those words. Everybody, thank you for joining us on Market Mavericks. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Market Mavericks. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to take your own adventure to the next level. Don't forget to follow the show to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with others who could benefit. And hey, if you know a market maverick who has a story that needs to be heard, please drop their name in the comments. We would love to bring their insights to the show. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.